The year is 480 BC. Imagine a world on the brink. The mighty Persian Empire led by the god King Xerxes casts a long shadow over Greece. Their army, a vast horde drawn from every corner of the empire, moves inexorably westward. They have already tasted Greek blood at Thermopylae. The legendary Spartan stand, valiant but ultimately futile, bought precious time but could not halt the Persian advance. Athens, the cradle of democracy, lay directly in the path of this unstoppable force. Fear gripped the hearts of the Greeks. The Persian Empire at its zenith dwarfed any force the Greeks could muster on land. Defeat seemed inevitable. Some city-states, cowed by the Persian might, chose submission. Others, clinging to hope, prepared for a last stand. Among them stood Themistocles, an Athenian general with a mind as sharp as his blade. He knew that conventional tactics would mean certain defeat. The fate of Greece, of democracy itself, rested on his shoulders. His gaze fell upon the sea. It was there, in the narrow straits of Salamis, that Themistocles saw a glimmer of hope. Themistocles was no ordinary general. He was a man of extraordinary vision and unparalleled strategic acumen. He was a visionary, a master strategist who understood the strategic importance of naval power. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Themistocles saw the sea not as a barrier but as a vast arena of opportunity and potential dominance. He had foreseen the Persian threat long before it materialized and tirelessly advocated for the expansion of the Athenian navy. His foresight was not just about building ships, it was about securing the future of Athens and ensuring its place as a dominant power in the Greek world. His foresight was met with resistance, but Themistocles, with his characteristic determination, prevailed. He faced opposition from those who could not see beyond the immediate costs and risks, but he was relentless in his pursuit of a stronger, more formidable navy. He poured resources into building a fleet of triremes, sleek warships powered by rows of oarsmen. These ships were not just vessels, they were symbols of Athenian ingenuity and resilience. These vessels, fast and maneuverable, were the pride of Athens. They represented a new era of naval warfare, one where speed and agility could outmatch sheer numbers and brute force. Themistocles knew that the vast numbers of the Persian fleet, while intimidating, could be turned against them in the confined waters of a strait. He understood the geography of the region and how it could be used to Athens' advantage. He envisioned a battle not of brute force, but of cunning and maneuverability, where the Athenian triremes could outmaneuver and cripple the lumbering Persian ships. His strategy was revolutionary, focusing on the strengths of his fleet rather than the weaknesses of his enemy. But the Athenian assembly, accustomed to land warfare, was hesitant. They were used to the traditional methods of combat and found it difficult to place their trust in a naval strategy that seemed unproven and risky. They favored a direct confrontation on land where numbers held the perceived advantage. The idea of relying on ships in the sea was foreign to many, and they were reluctant to change their ways. Themistocles, however, saw the folly in this. He knew that the Persian army was too vast and powerful to be defeated in a conventional land battle. His insight and understanding of naval warfare set him apart from his peers. He understood that to meet the Persians head-on in a conventional battle would be suicidal. The Persian forces were too numerous, and their land-based strategies were too strong for the Athenians to overcome without a significant advantage. The fate of Greece rested on his ability to convince his fellow Athenians to trust in his unconventional strategy. He had to persuade them that their salvation lay not in the strength of their hoplites, but in the speed and maneuverability of their triremes. He needed to make them see that their salvation lay not in the strength of their hoplites, but in the speed and maneuverability of their triremes. His vision and determination ultimately led to the creation of a navy that would change the course of history and secure Athens' place as a dominant power in the ancient world. On the opposite shore, Xerxes, the self-proclaimed god-king, surveyed his massive fleet with a mixture of pride and impatience. His eyes scanned the horizon, where the vast expanse of his naval power stretched out before him, a testament to the might of the Persian Empire. The sea was dotted with ships, each one a symbol of his ambition and the reach of his dominion. His navy, a vast armada drawn from the far corners of his empire, dwarfed the Athenian fleet many times over. This was not just a fleet, it was a floating city, a conglomeration of cultures and warriors united under the banner of Persia. The sheer number of ships was staggering, each one manned by seasoned sailors and soldiers ready to enforce Xerxes' will. Ships from Phoenicia, Egypt, Ionia, and more filled the Aegean Sea, their sails blotting out the horizon. The diversity of the fleet was a reflection of the vastness of Xerxes' empire, each vessel carrying the hopes and fears of its homeland. The sea itself seemed to groan under the weight of so many ships, a living testament to the logistical prowess of the Persian war machine. Xerxes had expected the Greeks to scatter before his might, their spirit broken by the fall of Thermopylae. The battle had been a brutal display of Persian strength, a clear message to any who would dare oppose him. The narrow pass had been choked with the bodies of fallen warriors, a grim reminder of the cost of defiance. Yet the Athenian fleet remained, a defiant thorn in his side. These were not mere sailors, they were warriors of the sea, driven by a fierce determination to protect their homeland. Their ships, though fewer in number, were agile and well-manned, each one a potential threat to the Persian juggernaut. Their refusal to yield angered him, fueled his desire to crush this insolent resistance. Xerxes was not accustomed to defiance. His word was law, his will unchallenged. The Greeks' audacity was an affront to his divine right to rule, a challenge that he could not ignore. His advisors, however, were wary. They had seen the cunning of the Greeks, understood the dangers of underestimating their resolve. They knew that the narrow straits could turn the tide of battle, that the Athenian triremes could outmaneuver their larger, less agile ships. They cautioned against engaging the Greeks in the narrow straits, warning of the Athenian triremes' maneuverability. The Straits of Salamis were treacherous, a labyrinth of currents and rocks that could spell disaster for an unwary fleet. The advisors urged caution, suggesting alternative strategies that might avoid a direct confrontation. But Xerxes, drunk on his own power, dismissed their concerns. He had tasted victory at Thermopylae, had witnessed the Spartan defiance crumble before his legions. His confidence was unshakable, his belief in his own invincibility absolute. He had tasted victory at Thermopylae, had witnessed the Spartan defiance crumble before his legions. The memory of that triumph was fresh in his mind, a potent reminder of his military prowess. He believed that the Greeks would be no match for his superior numbers and firepower. He would not be deterred by a handful of Athenian ships. To him, they were an annoyance, a minor obstacle on his path to glory. His fleet was ready, his men eager for battle. The time for caution had passed, now was the time for action. He ordered his fleet into the Straits of Salamis. It was a bold move, one that he believed would bring him swift and decisive victory. The narrow waters would funnel the Greek ships into a killing zone, where his superior numbers could crush them with ease. It was a gamble, a move born out of arrogance and a thirst for complete annihilation of the Greek resistance. Xerxes was willing to risk everything on this one battle, convinced that his destiny was to conquer and rule. Xerxes believed that his superior numbers would overwhelm the Greeks, that their ships would be crushed against the shores of the straits. He envisioned a swift and brutal victory, one that would cement his legacy as the greatest ruler of his time. He had underestimated, however, the cunning of Themistocles. The Athenian leader was a master strategist, his mind sharp and his resolve unbreakable. He had anticipated Xerxes' move, had prepared his fleet for the coming battle. He had fallen into a trap of his own making. The narrow straits that Xerxes believed would be his advantage turned into a deadly snare. The Greek ships, smaller and more maneuverable, darted in and out of the Persian lines, striking with precision and retreating before the larger ships could respond. Xerxes watched in horror as his mighty fleet was ensnared, his gamble turning into a catastrophic defeat. Themistocles, meanwhile, was playing a dangerous game. He was a master strategist, a man who understood that sometimes the greatest victories come not from brute strength, but from cunning and guile. His mind was a labyrinth of plans and counterplans, each designed to outwit his formidable opponent. He knew that to defeat the Persians, he needed to lure them into the narrow confines of the Straits of Salamis, where their numerical advantage would be negated. The straits were treacherous, a place where the vast Persian fleet would find itself cramped and unable to maneuver effectively. Here, the smaller, more agile Greek ships would have the upper hand. But how could he convince Xerxes, drunk on his own power, to make such a blunder? Xerxes, the Persian king, was a man of immense pride and ambition. He saw himself as invincible, his army as an unstoppable force. To lure such a man into a trap required a plan of extraordinary subtlety and deception. The answer, Themistocles realized, lay in deception. He needed to create an illusion, a mirage that would lead Xerxes to believe that victory was within his grasp. It was a high-stakes gamble, one that required nerves of steel and an unshakable belief in his own strategy. He needed to make the Persians believe that the Greeks were weak, divided, and on the verge of collapse. Themistocles knew that the appearance of disunity would be a powerful weapon. If the Persians thought the Greeks were in disarray, they would be more likely to make a rash move. He began by spreading rumors of Greek disunity, planting false information that suggested the Athenian fleet was preparing to abandon Salamis. These rumors were carefully crafted to reach Persian ears, each one a thread in the intricate web of deception Themistocles was weaving. He even sent a message to Xerxes himself, a message disguised as a plea for peace, but in reality, a carefully crafted web of misinformation designed to play on the Persian king's arrogance. The message was a masterpiece of psychological manipulation, designed to exploit Xerxes' overconfidence and lead him into a trap. The message suggested that the Greeks were demoralized, that their fleet was on the verge of desertion, and that a swift Persian attack would deliver a decisive victory. It painted a picture of a Greek force on the brink of collapse, ripe for the taking. The situation in the Athenian assembly was equally tense. Themistocles' plan was not without its risks, and many in the assembly were deeply concerned. The stakes were incredibly high, and the outcome was far from certain. Panic and doubt gripped the hearts of many. The fear of defeat, of seeing their homes and families fall to the Persians, was a powerful force. It took all of Themistocles' skill as a leader to keep the assembly from descending into chaos. Some clamored for retreat, arguing that their position was untenable. They saw the Persian army as an unstoppable juggernaut, and the idea of standing and fighting seemed like madness. But Themistocles stood firm, his voice echoing with unwavering resolve. He spoke with a passion that cut through the fear and doubt, reminding his fellow Greeks of their strength, their courage, and their shared destiny. He argued that their only hope lay in fighting, in luring the Persians into a trap of their own making. He laid out his plan in detail, showing how the narrow straits would turn the Persian numbers against them, how the Greek ships could outmaneuver their larger, more cumbersome foes. In the end, his passionate pleas, combined with the urgency of the situation, swayed the assembly. They saw the wisdom in his words, the brilliance of his strategy, and they agreed to stand and fight. They would make their stand at Salamis. The Greek fleet began to prepare for the coming battle, each sailor and soldier knowing that the fate of their homeland rested on their shoulders. The fate of Greece now rested on a knife's edge balanced between the cunning of Themistocles and the arrogance of Xerxes. The stage was set for one of the most dramatic and decisive battles in history, a clash that would determine the future of Western civilization.